maybe 20 or more years ago. And she told me that when she was a little girl, she used to run full force into the wall and knock herself unconscious. And right before she passed out, she would say to herself, now my parents are going to suffer when they see how badly I'm hurt. So in other words, her playing the victim was the way of blaming her parents. Now, notice this was a private thought. She was thinking to herself, they're going to suffer when they see how I'm hurt. She doesn't even say it out loud, but she's releasing her anger. Now, suicide is an expression of this same victim mentality, because some people who commit suicide actually think before they commit the act, now they're going to suffer when they see what they made me do, when they'll see that they made me kill myself. So in many cases, suicide is an extreme expression of the victim's way of releasing anger indirectly. And this explains why those who are on the receiving end of a suicide often feel really guilty, because they sense the accusation behind the act of suicide. You know, I've had a lot of people come to me recently who have been on the receiving end of a spouse that committed suicide or a sibling. It is horrible because all that anger, the accusation gets stuck in you, and you feel, oh my gosh, I've done a terrible thing. It's my fault. If anybody listening to me now is in this situation and you want to talk to me about this, of course I'm here for you. Let me also remind you of the call-in number so that you can reach out to me today, because I am live now, and you can call me at 833-220-1200, 833-220-1200. Okay, and you know the best part of this show for me is being here for you. Okay, now here's the trap with playing the victim. It gives you a temporary sense of relief, kind of like taking like a poop on somebody's head. But the temporary release is no solution. The downside of the victim pattern is your grudge continues unchanged. You get a temporary release of your anger each time you play the victim, but then you're just chasing your own tail because the grudge continues. It's kind of like, you know, that ad, crunch away, we'll make more. So you release temporarily, you play the victim, you sing the woe is me song, but the underlying cause of your feeling of victimization, the underlying source of the victimization, the hurt and the anger, continues, and the grudge continues. Now, the reason it continues is because you still haven't directly said what's happening or what happened that didn't work for you, that hurt you, and you haven't felt heard and understood. And this is key to letting go of the grudge. You need to feel understood by the person who has done you wrong in order to be able to move forward and let go of the grudge. Now, I know a lot of people will say, oh, you got to forgive and forget. It really doesn't work. Until you feel heard and understood, there's always a kernel that stays stuck in your soul. So you have to directly say what it is that was said or done, and you have to feel heard and understood. And everybody must feel, as I'm saying this to you directly, until you feel understood. How do you push away from the table if you haven't even eaten a bite? Think about it. You're still hungry for being heard and understood. How can you move away from a grudge if you haven't felt heard and understood? How can you push away from the table if you're still hungry and you haven't eaten? Now, speaking of not feeling understood, most of us haven't felt understood by the people who harmed us. And this is where my first Hay House book, Kiss Your Fights Goodbye, shows you how to properly present your issues so that instead of instilling a feeling of defensiveness in the other person, you can actually learn to speak about what hurt you or what angered you in a way that makes the other person actually want to listen and understand. And, you know, I just had a session right before I came on today, and it's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. The woman in the couple was criticizing the guy for something he said to make her feel criticized. But the way she was speaking about it made him feel defensive. And so he now was hurt and started to have to pad his wounded ego, and he could not hear her. He could not understand her, and they were in a loop. This is a very, very common pattern. That's what I talk about in Kiss Your Fights Goodbye. The number one fight pattern in intimate couples is called the demand-withdraw negative escalation cycle, or husband withdrawal for short, because typically the male body is hardwired to be hyperreactive to stress and danger. And when a guy feels like he's being blamed or criticized, his body involuntarily switches into autonomic nervous system arousal, which triggers the fight-flight response. And there are three ways that most guys flee from the accusation. And the first way is obvious. They just leave the room or the house. They avoid physical contact with you, hide out in the basement or the workshop, or go away, hang out with the boys. The physical fleeing is easy to see, physical withdrawal. But the other two ways that guys flee or withdraw is more subtle. The second way is they psychically flee. They're physically present, but they're mentally gone. They kind of look like they've got a no hablo inglés expression on their face. They're looking deaf, dumb, and blind, drooling on their tie, glazed over expression. They're in shutdown. They're not physically withdrawn. They're psychologically withdrawn, but physically present. And the third way they withdraw is through what I call verbal fleeing. They verbally defend themselves, make excuses, and justify. That's a very common way of fleeing, verbal fleeing. And what happens is when the female partner sees this withdrawing, she thinks, oh, you don't even care enough about me to listen and understand what's bothering me. And that makes the hurt that she's feeling morph into more anger. And the more she comes at him with more anger, the more heat she delivers to the guy, the more she triggers this ANS arousal, because it's heated confrontation, heated fighting that triggers this chemical imbalance. So how I helped them to break the cycle was I had her not criticize him, but just simply use my XY formula where she described what was said or done in neutral language. She didn't even say, you did this wrong. She just said, X is how she felt. I felt hurt when Y was said or done to me. Y was a neutral description when I was told, when I saw, when this facial expression was made. And so as soon as I showed her how to do it in this way, taking out the word you, simply describing what he said and how she felt, immediately he wasn't defensive and he felt empathy for her. Because if you trigger defensiveness, what happens is then the guy is too busy patting his wounded ego to pay attention to you and listen and understand you. So it's really, really important. The being understood is essential to resolving your conflict in the moment. If you don't resolve it in the moment, then you start having a big bag of unresolved conflicts or an unresolved issue, both of which lead to grudges. So you see what I'm talking about? Either way, if we resolve it in the moment, we are doing a lot to avoid grudges developing down the line. Okay? I want to give you the phone number again right before I go to break. And if you're listening live, I know lots of folks don't listen live, they listen to the recording, but if you are live and you want me to help you get past your grudge, call me at 833-220-1200. We'll be back in a moment on Love Never Dies Radio.
Omega Institute, offering workshops, retreats, and online learning dedicated to awakening the best in the human spirit. For 40 years, Omega has been a gathering place for great thinkers, creative talent, spiritual teachers, and social visionaries. With 390 workshops to choose from, Omega offers something for everyone. Located in Rhinebeck, New York, just 90 miles north of New York City, Omega's natural environment and quiet pace allow for extraordinary experiences to unfold. Learn more at eomega.org.
Is something missing in your life? Maybe you feel lonely and unloved, or your work doesn't bring you joy, or you're secretly jealous of others. Millions of people, even those who are successful and surrounded by those who love them, secretly feel empty. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf, and I want you to know that the real source of our discontent is disconnection. And connecting to others and feeling love to our core is the cure. But to really connect, you gotta get naked. And I don't mean drop and trowel. I'm talking about radical emotional nudity, where we expose our deepest self, warts and all. Being seen and loved in this vulnerable place is the key to unlocking the door to self-love, healing, deeply intimate relationships, vibrancy, and joy in every area of your life. Join me June 7 through 9 at the Art of Living Retreat Center in Boone, North Carolina. Get naked, get connected, and be radically transformed. To find out more, visit AskDrLove.com/live events. That's AskDrLove.com/live events.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
You're listening to Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. If you yearn to get along better with your life partner or spouse, friends, family members, and even coworkers, Dr. Turndorf's book, Kiss Your Fights Goodbye, Dr. Love's 10 Simple Steps to Cooling Conflict and Rekindling Your Relationship, shows you how to turn conflict into connection for a lifetime of lasting love. Find out more about Kiss Your Fights Goodbye at AskDrLove.com. This is Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. This show is for you, the listener. Once again, here's Dr. Turndorf.
Hello again, and welcome back to Love Never Dies Radio. We're talking about how to get beyond grudges. And right before I took the break, I was speaking about how important it is to communicate whatever it is that doesn't land right with you in a way that will not trigger defensiveness and various withdrawal reactions. And basically, I've had people say to me, well, why can't I just let it rip however I want to let it rip? I was wrong. I'm in the right to, blast the other person. But when you present what hurt you or landed wrong in a way that's constructive, you're giving the gift not only to the other person, you're giving the gift to yourself. If you speak in a way that the other person cannot hear, and the person feels criticized and attacked and becomes defensive, you're not going to give yourself the gift of being heard and understood. So you've got to be strategic and speak in a way that is going to bring you the gift back to you. Wow, the person really doesn't feel damaged by me and wants to hear and understand. So it's a gift you give yourself to not evoke defensiveness in the other person. You want to help the other person, want to listen and understand you. Now, also, it's really important, too, that you become a good listener and you give that same gift of listening and understanding back. It's interesting, in that session I was talking about earlier today, the one partner did say to me, well, you know what, he's getting defensive because he feels criticized by me for the way I'm presenting how he criticized me, but I was criticized first. That's what she was saying, right? That's what I was feeling first. And at this point, it doesn't matter who hurt who first. What matters is that you do damage control. And we had to back up and do some first aid to calm him down. And that's at that moment where I rephrased how she presented her issue so that he could hear her and then listen and understand her. You see, it's a real art form. But you have to have the image of, I am not going to win the war and lose my relationship. If I hurt the other, I'm hurting myself. I always say, whatever you say and do boomerangs back on you. So if you hurt the other, you're hurting yourself. Okay? So now what happens? What happens if you don't have a chance to use these techniques that I'm talking about to really resolve your issues before someone leaves his or her body? What do you do if the grudge didn't get resolved, you didn't get the chance to work it out before the person who harmed you left his or her body? Now, here's where the transdimensional grief resolution method And the cornerstone of the method, the dialoguing with the departed technique, comes in. Because now with the